right, welcome into the Big Hitters Only podcast. We're recording literally 5 minutes after UNC falls to Duke 21-20. Duke rips off 21 straight. UNC went up 17-0 at halftime and then 20-0 early in the second half. And then kind of the game got away from the Tar Heels, gave it 21 straight, and then threw an interception on the final play to give Duke the win. Kind of saw it coming. Mike, your initial thoughts as UNC falls to 3-2 on the season?
I just have to say, are we not tired of this as a fan base? At what point is enough enough? Every Carolina fan I know, when they scored their first touchdown, looked at it and said, okay, well, here we go. Because we know their team cannot handle any adversity. We know that as soon as they get punched in the face, any plan they had, anything that's going well, falls by the wayside, and they just collapse in on themselves like a dying star. They cannot sustain momentum. Once they get up a couple scores, the play calling shifts dramatically from what's working, and they just play. I don't even have a good word to describe it. I can't even articulate how frustrated I am. Right? They play sloppy to a degree that which few college football fan bases know. It's the penalties. It's the whiffs on the offensive line. I mean, how many replays did we see tonight where there was an offensive line player trying to block someone that wasn't there as a defensive end came across the edge and was pressuring Connor Harrell? When is enough? We talk about accountability. Hey, Mac, the fake resignation stuff isn't going to work this time. You can't motivate your team by asking if you're the right guy. Last week was awful because we never stood a chance and we got blown out by a non-Power 4 opponent. This week is awful because we had the game in hand 20-0 in the second half, and we let them waltz right back into it and take it from us.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, and we got Connor on here, producer Connor Sparrow, and Mike Hardison should introduce y'all. Guys, remember to rate, review, subscribe. Appreciate all that Connor does behind the scenes for this podcast. The big thing is the defense. There's so many penalties that gave them another shot here and there, and then missed tackles. That one drive when their running back Star Thomas was just running all over UNC, and it was like Swiss cheese. It was so easy, and they physically beat UNC on that drive. And then UNC doesn't have a quarterback. They have an average quarterback. We're seeing what life is like with Mack Brown with an average to below average quarterback. He made a couple throws, but he missed a bunch of throws. He was constantly hurried. That last drive, there were a couple passes that were 7 yards, 10 yards, and one or two that were even past 10 yards. You got to move the ball. You got to get to the point. And then on the last play, interception, he was shuffling backwards, threw off his back foot, and then rushed, and it was an interception. Connor, your initial thoughts on what we saw today. UNC falls 21-20 to Duke, moved to 3-2 on the season.
Number one takeaway for me from this game is just undisciplined and mentally weak. And like I was saying before the show, everything's fine. Defense comes out hot. Couple TFLs. People are banging their helmets together. Everything's good. But football's a 60-minute game. So obviously, everyone's going to come with a little adversity. What does this defense do whenever there's a little adversity? When there's a big pass interference or, a big play, a couple of missed tackles? When it rains, it pours. They just keep it coming. And there's no resilience, no mental toughness. And the number one thing with Carolina this year is just drive-killing penalties. You saw it. There was a big drive, 9 minutes left. We're up 6. Carolina gets a holding call and an unsportsmanlike conduct on J.J. Jones on the same play. All of a sudden, you look at the score bug. If you're watching on mute, you're like, 1st and 35, what the hell is going on? And all of us, that's the drive right there. Duke gets the ball back, scores 4 offensive plays later. That's the game right there. The sign of a great team is how you respond to adversity. When there's a big pass interference, big missed tackle, when it rains, it pours. Like you said, Ross, missed tackle after missed tackle, and defense continually gave up chunk plays. One stat I did a little research on, Duke's longest play in the first half, 14 yards. Fine, great. Second half, 11 plays of 10 or more yards for Duke. Just a stark difference in the first and second half. Disappointing to see, and one thing about Mack Brown is he's been beating Duke consistently. Now what? That was the one thing he had going for him.
That's a great point. Complimentary football. The defense got a good stop. Elijah Huzzy had 2 pass breakups. Marcus Allen had a pass breakup. UNC got the ball back, and then it was the 2 penalties, 1st and 35. They get 20 yards out of that. It's kind of hard to blame the offense there, but they can't move the ball like they used to. So you're not going to have Drake May or Sam Howell going for 75 yards for a touchdown like that. It's going to be a lot tougher. They leaned on Marion Hampton, but he kind of ran out of gas. He got nicked up there, and then the offense just stalled. And I think kind of what Connor said about adjustments and mentally weak and halftime adjustments, that falls on coaching staff. The coaching staff for Duke made adjustments, and UNC kind of failed to instill that this game is not over. There's 30 minutes left, and they fell apart, and it was a slow, methodical loss. And tips off hats off to Duke and their coaching staff for keeping their players locked in. And despite being down 20, which is not a huge deficit, but you're kind of like, shit, we're kind of fucked here. But they
if that was Carolina
and scored 21 straight. So I mean, hats off to what Duke did in their coaching staff. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, look, Star Thomas played an incredible second half, right? Like, we got a little critique from some JMU fans last weekend because we didn't give them enough credit, I guess. There's nothing, hats off to Duke. They came back, they rallied down 20. Like you, Connor, you alluded to, this was Carolina. I think we are losing this game 42-7, if we're down 20 in the third quarter. So they played great, and they showed up when it mattered. I do kind of appreciate this game in a weird sense, right? Like, it sounds weird, but when you're trying to describe this to someone that's not a Carolina football fan, right? When you're trying to describe why we are so frustrated with the coaching staff continuously, right? This is a perfect game to kind of point to. I was at a bar with friends. We were up 17-0 at half. I left at halftime to come back here. And they're kind of like patting me on the back, like, hell yeah, you beat your rival. This is awesome, right? And I just said, hey, wait, just let's see how it happens, because you cannot tell me that a team that scores 20 points in the first half and gives up 0 doesn't have the talent or the right plays to win the game. They clearly had the juice in the first half. What happens? They go into halftime, they don't make the adjustments that's necessary, and when Carolina has a lead, they play to not lose the game. And it's been that way for Mack Brown forever, for this team, for Mack Brown 2.0. They play not to lose the game, and more often than not, that bites them in the ass. And so, I just don't know where we go from here. We're gonna have Georgia Tech come in next weekend, or is my math wrong there?
Cut off there.
Is Georgia Tech the following weekend?
I think Pittsburgh's next weekend.
Pittsburgh's next
following weekend.
Okay, so we get Pittsburgh and then Georgia Tech back to back. We will not be favored in either of those games.
No,
at all. Right, we'll probably be a touchdown dog, I would imagine, to Pittsburgh, if not more. And Georgia Tech, I imagine, will be a touchdown dog as well.
Wow.
So, are we staring down the barrel of, I guess, 3 and 4 here going into October, like mid-October?
With a subpar schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. The numbers have changed now, and I think the mentality's changed. I mean, I texted y'all before the game started. I was texting Mike, maybe both y'all, but that JMU game and the aftermath that we talked about with Julian and Mike, kind of like when we recorded with Mike last week, I started getting texts about what was going on in the locker room, and then Julian and I referenced it. But I'm kind of, it's not excited to watch this team. The offense isn't fun. Just getting killed by JMU and then losing to Duke here. I was like, all right, 20-0. I can kind of get back on this season if they cranked out a pretty solid win at Duke, to kind of keep things going and see what happens at Pitt and versus Georgia Tech. But now it's such a deflating loss. So like Mike, alluded to, it's what are they going to look like against Pitt? What's the crowd going to look like? And then Georgia Tech. Pitt's a really good team. They have a great quarterback. Georgia Tech has won some big games already this season. So the mood around this team coming off just the disaster of JMU, the weird Mack Brown stuff, and then the deflating second half sets up for kind of a disastrous next 2 games, especially if they lose those 2. Now you win 2 more, you kind of can reset. But the way this team is playing, I don't think this offense can win us games.
Honest question to both of you. Have you seen anything that makes you think that we have a chance against Pitt or Georgia Tech?
I haven't seen them play, so I don't know. But Pitt seems good. They have a good quarterback.
I've watched Georgia Tech play once, and they're not bad.
I would be genuinely shocked. I would be shocked if Carolina goes 2-0 in those games. They are 100% dropping one of them. One thing I wanted to ask you guys, does this game make you feel any better about Duke? Did Duke really come out and win that game? Or was that more of a Carolina blowing that game after, double-digit lead? And also, second part of that, how much confidence did you have in Jacoby Criswell with 1:40 left to go 95 yards? Because mine was at a 0. If Drake May or Sam Howell's under center, I'm like, all right, there might be a chance. Maybe Daz News on the outside, whoever. But this was different.
Just needed a field goal, so just needed to go, what?
Oh, yeah, 60
yards, maybe?
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm not a math guy. No, Duke wasn't great. Duke was not great. I mean, that running back was good. He ran hard, and that drive when he broke 6 tackles on one rush and then 3 on another one, and then just ran right up the middle and stick lane, whiffed at him, and he scored a touchdown.
Oh my
He
God.
was good. Amari Hampton was good, but no one was really flashed there, and Duke's quarterback was not good. And it's a very winnable game for UNC. Get back on track, and they were up 20. It's like you're spotting UNC 20 points, and they didn't have a game plan or any adjustments, in-game adjustments in the third quarter, the fourth quarter to make things happen. I mean, the offensive line is uninspiring. They're probably below average. Quarterback, I think, is below average. I think if you put him against all Power 4 quarterbacks, he'd be in the bottom tier of that. And then the defense, average.
I mean,
Maybe a little bit above average on some plays here and there.
How is Duke beating us at both lines of scrimmage?
Yeah.
Like,
if you're Carolina, you know what they're going to
Diaz.
do. Yeah.
The thing that pisses me off is the first year for JMU's head coach and first year for Manny Diaz at Duke. Like, the rosters are so new. There's so many transfers, and they're playing a lot of young people, and it's not stable. And they both come in and beat UNC. That's frustrating. Year 6 of Mack, where everything should be established. That's always challenging. And then last year, losing to Virginia in the second year for your boy Tony Elliott, like, that was a big win for Tony Elliott. This is a big win for Manny Diaz. Like, Mack's kind of hand delivering these signature wins, these new coaches. They can kind of recruit on and kind of say, hey, we beat UNC, so it's frustrating.
To Connor, to your
Mike
point,
is taking this bad. Mike's taking this bad.
Hey, to Connor's point, did Malik Murphy beat us? No. I think Star Thomas did. I think their line probably did, right? Like, we had 3 sacks, I think, in the first half. In the second half, I don't think we put up anything. I'm genuinely at a loss, right? Like, I don't know what to say about this that hasn't already been said, because I feel like we can do this. We can do some variation of this podcast for so many games throughout the Mack Brown 2.0 era, right? Like, oh, hey, we blew it because the defense kind of folded in on itself, right? Like, it's a tissue paper mentality. Like, it is soft. And, like, I'm not going to critique these players that are on scholarship. I know they are stud athletes. That's why I'm so frustrated. If they were, like, service academy players, I'd be like, hey, you know what? Like, they're trying their best. Credit to them. Like, they're giving it their all.
Getting paid now, too.
And, like, if they truly couldn't compete athletically, I would be looking at this and be like, hey, bad luck. But these guys are really good recruits and studs, and I just look at it and I just cannot help blaming the coaching staff. They're not getting developed. They're not getting coached up the right way. They don't have the right mentality. They don't have a good instilled culture. And so, for me, I'm fully out. Last week I was mostly out. This week I'm fully out. If we don't change at the end of the season, I'm not attending a game.
We got 7 more post-game pods, Mike. We got 7 more of these.
Man.
We better get creative.
This is torture, man. We'll get a bingo sheet going.
I'm going to run through some stats here, just kind of like inform our listeners. Kind of maybe this will create some talking points here. Criswell was 21 for 39 for 251 and 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That 1 interception being the very last play of the game. Amari Hampton, 29 rushes for 103 yards. He also had 4 catches for 50 yards. UNC had 407 total yards, outpacing Duke, had 394. UNC passed for 251 and rushed for 156. A glaring number here is penalties. UNC had 10 penalties for 79 yards. Duke had 8 for 65 yards, so not a huge difference there, but 10 penalties for 79, especially the timely ones, is what really affects UNC. Other than that, like, there wasn't much difference. Duke only converted 2 of 14 third downs. Truly, it was just like, I guess, Duke capitalizing when they needed to in the second half and making plays when they needed to and making stops when they needed to. Star Thomas, 30 rushing attempts for 166 yards and that 1 touchdown. Malik Murphy, 15 for 34. That's pretty bad. 209 yards and 1 touchdown.
The one thing about Carolina that's frustrating is that, especially in the second half, after you see Malik Murphy airmail 10 passes, you know they're going to run the ball. But yet Star Thomas still has 166 yards rushing. If you look at Malik Murphy, people are going to look at this game and look at the box score and be like, oh, Duke's 5-0. Malik Murphy's not a good quarterback. He was not good at Texas last year in those 2 starts. They beat a terrible BYU team, and they barely beat a Kansas State team with 5 NFL weapons. Malik Murphy had 5 guys that are playing in the NFL last year on that Texas team. He is not a good quarterback. You knew they were going to run the ball with Star Thomas, and it was still missed tackle. I'm not a believer in this Duke team, but man, they're the best team in North Carolina. Imagine saying that a few years ago. Imagine saying Duke football would be the best team in North Carolina 3 or 4 years ago. That's shocking.
5-0 Duke, rank them. Might get some votes in the top 25. All right, let's move this to kind of looking forwards. Pitt. I mean, what can UNC improve on? Where do they need to get better? Honestly, I think getting Kamen Rucker back would be helpful, but I think Des Evans played well. I think Bo Atkinson played pretty well. I don't know.
Elijah Huzzy played well.
Played great. I mean, Power Eccles made some plays. Their defense, I was like, all right, the guys are making some plays out there. They just, when they needed to make plays in the second half, they didn't. Like, they only scored, was 3 touchdowns, right? Yeah, 3 touchdowns in the second half. I mean, you should be able to be a team if they only scored 21. You should be able to outscore them. It's just, I don't think UNC can. Yeah. Especially if you shut them out in the first half. All right, looking forward, anything you're like, all right, fire up the fan base here, Mike, Connor. Like, what can we say about this team looking forward? I mean, I'm not inspired by this team. And
you want me to give my pep talk here? Because I can try my best here. All right, so look, it's out the window. The season, the pressure's off.
Basketball's a month away. There's the pep talk.
Basketball's a month away. We're almost there. But the pressure's off, right? You've been blown out by an inferior team, right? On paper, you have blown a giant lead against one of your biggest rivals. Okay, so in terms of how bad it can get, we're pretty close to the bottom. Okay, if you really kind of dig deep and you think that there's something worth salvaging here, you can motivate a team based upon that. We are going through adversity. We're going through some dark times, but if we rally around each other, we can kind of get through this. And you know what? We may not achieve what we set out to at the beginning of the season, but there's still a lot to gain from this season and a lot of stuff to be learned about ourselves in the process. And that's how I would frame it if I were the coaching staff. What they'll probably do is Mack Brown will go in the press conference this week and say, I think we did a lot of things right, and there's stuff to work on, and unfortunately, that just didn't break our way. And there won't be a lot of accountability, but that's how I would frame it if I were in the locker room tonight.
Yeah, and I think you can build on, I think as a fan, you can be like, all right, they got their ass kicked 70-50 in Chapel Hill last week. They came out and were ready to play. They looked sharp. Amarian looked great. There was huge holes in the first and second quarter. Defense was making some plays, 20-0. Like that, I felt good. I felt a little bit back in. I was like, all right, here we go, 20-0. Yeah. Like there must have been some good coaching, some good Mac speeches, maybe rallying around your teammates, kind of rallying around each other, which you want to see, playing for each other, not quitting. So that was good to see. You saw some emotion there late. So I think you can build off that. Connor, you got anything for us? My audio is kind of going in and out. I'm not sure if that's me or y'all or what. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, you're good. The one thing I would say is I did see some encouraging things from the offensive play calling in the first half. Like there was a 4th and 1 on that touchdown to J.J. Jones where
that was great.
Everybody in the world thinks Amarian Hampton's going to get the ball and an inside handoff, and he probably should have. But they run a fake, roll out to the right. Criswell makes a nice throw off his back foot. And that's a good sign. Like, they mixed things up. They ran a reverse. Like, I saw different things rather than Jacoby Criswell sitting in the pocket, waiting to get sacked, hoping somebody gets open. So I saw some encouraging signs there. And the other point would be the schedule has some winnable games on it. If you look at it, I know Carolina is not what we thought they were coming into the year, but there are winnable games. It's not like you have a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. I mean, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, you should probably win one of those. Virginia's a winnable game. Florida State, we know about them this year. Wake's a winnable game. BC's probably pretty tough. And then State has also not looked great this year. Like, there are some wins on that schedule if they just pull it together. I don't know if they will. I don't feel too confident in it. But if you want to look at it glass half full, I think that's what you got to preach to the locker room. If Mack Brown still has the locker room, if that voice isn't stale. I mean, I think that's a fair question to ask.
I think what's worth noting here is that, I think Wake Forest is the only game on the schedule where I'm pretty confident we can get them. Virginia, I'm questioning now, right? I think it's going to be a very tall task to beat either Pitt or Georgia Tech. I don't give as much shot against FSU at FSU. If we're in Chapel Hill, maybe a different story. State's had our number. It's going to be really tough to get bowl eligible at this point, right? Like, let's be completely honest. With what we're seeing, with the product that we have on the field, we've got 3 wins. We have to get 3 more. Where we can point to a couple opportunities on the schedule, but there's little room for error. Very little margin for error. And so, for me personally, right, I think, can we all agree this has to be Mack's last year, right? Like, from just a completely objective, rational perspective at this point?
Of course.
I think so, and I think that's what the fan
Yeah.
base is going to say immediately following this game, unless Jacoby Criswell turns into a Heisman candidate, which is not going to happen. So
we're not the fans and the boosters making the decisions, and like I think that way, but I don't think like a booster. I'm not sure. I'm not friends with Matt. I don't play golf with him at Linville.
I'm gonna finish that. I'm gonna finish that real quick, right? Like I think he's out regardless. I hear your point on the boosters, maybe not feeling the same way we do. I think the general mindset around the team right now is pretty abysmal. I also think that the fan buy-in will drive a lot of those booster sentiments, and that there will be push to have him leave. I would like to see Matt go out with a bowl eligible season, right? Like I don't want him to fall on his face and go, 3-9 or 4-8 on the way out the door, because he has done incredible things for this program over the span of his career, right? I don't want him to have to stumble into a forced resignation. I really don't. Right? Like I like the guy. My dog that's sitting right next to me is named after him, right? Like I don't want to be in this situation where it's awkward between the UNC football program and Mack Brown. Like that's not what I desire at the end of the season. We need him. But
we need. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, like, so for me, get to 6 wins, get a bowl game, maybe get a winnable bowl game, go out at 7-6. Not what you wanted, not what you hoped, but you can at least hold your head high as you walk out the door.
That would be awesome. I'm not sure we can get there. Like I agree. Looking at the schedule here, like the games, JMU was a win on the schedule, right? Duke was kind of I thought like Duke was a very winnable game. First year Manny Diaz. So 2 of those are gone now. And now you look at the schedule. Florida State looks easier, but it's not gonna be easy. Easier than maybe we thought preseason. Pitt, Georgia Tech, Virginia. I mean, all these are winnable, but all of them are very losable. Especially when you get late in the season. Boston College, NC State. Like quarterback, you have to have a quarterback, and UNC does not have a quarterback, so that gives me the lack of confidence heading into this stretch of games. I'm almost like 5 wins, get a new coach, like get things going, transfer portal. Like, do you want to go to equivalent of the Mayo Bowl, limping into that with an uninspired team, with a coach that's already out, playing the 17.
Ross, the Mayo Bowl is above us right now, man.
Yeah,
why,
I know.
Why are you aiming so high right now?
What would be the equivalent? Like, does the ACC still have the alignment
the Gasparilla Bowl or the
Alamo Bowl?
Maybe the New York one that's played in the Yankee Stadium. Like,
you guys aren't fired up for a Carolina versus State matchup. Both teams are 5-6, vying to be bowl eligible. Yeah, put it on ESPN Plus. Doesn't that sound electric? Come on.
I hear Shreveport's lovely in December.
That's right. So it's just like, all right, at some point you got to rip the Band-Aid off. It's like, all right, if we're going to make the move, make it in December, and then just start. You got to hit the transport. You got to get that coach in to start doing the transport stuff.
They need to make the decision now. Start back-channeling with boosters to raise money, and start back-channeling with different staff at certain elite programs that we've talked about, and see if there's interest early.
And it's not just transfer portal. The signing period is like mid to late December, usually like that third Wednesday. December. So it's completely different schedule now. We don't have until February to get your signing class in. You have to start re-recruiting your players, hitting the transfer portal, and then making sure you sign the players you want to sign. I mean, we're talking, this is months ahead of time, and our mind is going there, which is a bad thing. But that's kind of the realistic thing when you think about making a coaching change. You have to think about the recruiting class, transfer portal, and re-recruiting your players, getting in all this admin, all these different coaches in. It's a massive thing to do in like 2 or 3 weeks. So the planning has to start soon. Anything else? Final words?
Yeah, so real quick, and then this will be my last piece. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just how you have to view it, right? Like, I think too many times in the offseason, we have been reactive as a program. And I think that's been one of UNC's fatal flaws, is that we have been reactive to things, and we kind of let things happen, and then we respond. If you really want to change the tide, you want to change the culture around UNC, I think we know we need to move to a new coaching staff. We need to be proactive. We need to have the hard conversations now. You can tell Mack, hey, you're going to finish the year. If you're Bubba, you can tell Mack, hey, this is it. This is the last season. We cannot continue past this point. We are going to start looking elsewhere. I don't think it should be anyone on this staff, because there's going to be too much pressure to hold on to Mack's people. It needs to be someone completely new from somewhere with a good football culture. And so I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's, unfortunate. It just is what it is. And if you want to change things, you have to be proactive, and the conversation starts now, and the process begins tomorrow.
How about How about we bring Ben Johnson home, Detroit Lions offense coordinator? Just everybody pull together, get the boosters together, get some money. Come on, guys, let's shoot high.
If you're in the NFL, you don't want to stay in the NFL. You don't want anything to do with college football. Anyway, guys,
man.
great show. We made something out of nothing. We were sitting there at 11. I was like, God, what else can we talk about? We're at 25 minutes now. I want to talk briefly, thoughts and prayers and everything, T's and P's to West North Carolina. I haven't seen the footage from the flooding, and I've got a bunch of buddies up there. It's devastating. I'm going to try to do something, just little things like they don't have drinking water, things like that. Maybe if you see some charities to either donate to or get with your church or your local community there's going to be tons of work needed to rebuild all those towns, all those communities. I mean, people are lost and don't have ways out of their little areas. It's crazy. The footage is crazy. It hits close to home. I've been going to the mountains my whole life, and I have friends in Hendersonville and Brevard and Asheville, like most of us do, and obviously Boone. So I've been hearing. I mean, one of my buddies, he's a listener to this podcast, Wayne House. He doesn't have cell service, so I haven't heard from him. His wife made it out. His wife's back in Durham, but he's cleaning up his flooded basement. But they don't have cell service, so it's kind of crazy. So a lot of UNC fans up in the western part of the state. So we're thinking with them. We're obviously going to have a big rebuilding force there. Thanks to Garrett on the graphic side of things. Siobhan's going to Spain and Portugal. He'll be gone for a week or two. So Connor's going to be a full-time producer here to help us out with that.
We're back.
And thanks for Mike and Connor for hopping on this podcast. All right, guys, we will talk to you next time. Hopefully have a show or two this week. Maybe get Julian back on. We may be killing Julian with how hard he takes UNC football. But we do appreciate y'all listening, and we'll talk to you next time.